I went with my girlfriend to see her family in Denver over the holidays, and they are a very religious family. However, they're also extraordinarily intelligent. Her sister's husband is a university professor, and so basically the whole time was all kinds of existential and theological discussions. The most interesting things in terms of what I heard in terms of apologetics that I wanted to hear what you guys had to say about was regarding how we can really know anything in the first place.
Well, I hear this a lot, this idea of how can you really know anything? And it's a big question that I have an interest in, but it doesn't really matter because what we're talking about isn't a requirement of knowledge. It's about what you believe and whether or not your beliefs are rationally justified. So I'd have to know, what do they mean by knowledge? Are they talking about absolute certainty? Because that's a big red herring that I don't care anything at all about, because we don't wait until we're absolutely certain to call something knowledge, and we don't wait until we have knowledge to act. We act in accordance with our beliefs. And so I'm more concerned with what you actually believe and why you believe it. Do you have good reasons? Not whether or not you call it knowledge or you think that it counts as knowledge or it's absolute certain. Because we don't have to get that far. So I don't see what the problem is if people, inevitably when they say, ask these questions about how can you really know anything, it's a way of diverting from the fact that they're claiming to believe something or in some cases to know something and offering no justification for it.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's a way of trying to shift the burden onto you so that you're defending a position that you don't actually have to defend. Because they're the ones that are asserting that some God exists or whatever. They have to defend that. And if they're falling back on this like solipsism or something like that as some kind of defense, that's actually not a defense of their position at all.
It didn't quite feel like that. It was almost like as you sort of corner people more and more into not being able to defend these positions. It's sort of like the nuclear option of just blowing up all knowledge.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, a lot of his critiques were he talked a lot about naturalism, and I'm not entirely sure what that is, if that's an actual thing.
So it's two things.
Yeah.
It's two things. There's philosophical naturalism and there's methodological naturalism. And philosophical naturalism is this assertion that nothing but the natural exists. That's not, in my opinion, a defensible position at all, because it is an assertion that nothing but the natural exists, and I don't know how you came up with that. But there's methodological naturalism, which is basically the foundation of science, which is we can only investigate those things within nature. We have no mechanism for investigating things that aren't natural. And so we are going to confine our methodology to the realm of methodological naturalism. And it's not a pronouncement that the supernatural doesn't exist. It's an acknowledgement that because we cannot test for or confirm the supernatural, we're not going to make pronouncements that it is true or isn't true. We're just going to keep operating within this framework. And the curious thing is that for everything that we've found an explanation for, the answer has been natural.
Yeah.
Now, that's still not confirmation that there's nothing supernatural. But it's like I was saying before the show, the James Randi Educational Foundation has a $1 million prize, and they challenge people who make supernatural claims to demonstrate the truth of their claims. But the most they could ever do is demonstrate that, let's say, a psychic who claims that they are getting information from the dead is able to produce accurate information. They can't tell you why. They can't tell you whether it's God, aliens, psychic powers, or the dead, because we don't have the capability of investigating that. So that's the distinction between the naturalism thing. On the subject of how we can really know, for people who go down that road, in addition to what I said before, why not just say, okay, let's both concede for now that we can't know anything, that K-N-O-W becomes a fairly meaningless and useless proposition. Now let's talk about how we can decide what is most reasonable to accept as likely to be true as we go about living our lives. I try to do this. I think it's the foundation of skepticism. I think most people try to do this in most areas, and some people have been conned into not doing this in the area of does a God exist, or any other kind of woo-ish supernatural claim.
I guess it just seems like the only weakness in that argument would be how do you define reasonable? Because, again, that would be something that someone like who I was arguing with could say that saying that it's reasonable or not reasonable is again sort of a rhetorical trap based mostly on your own predilections or assertions.
It's not just based on individual predilections and assertions. We have methods and we have consensus in many ways. Yes, is it an absolute discrete, identifiable, ooh, we now have 8 bits of evidence and so we're done? No. And each claim is different because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence and trivial claims don't. Is it, and it should be obvious to people. The fact that we can't necessarily quantify this is just a bunch of hand-waving